Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being virtually here. My name is Natalie Gedre. I'm Brazilian. I'm a journalist, and I'm very happy to moderate this panel that will discuss such a relevant matter. And quick background story first. I took my master's here in London, where I am right now, and I chose refugees and football as my research topic because it is a very complex matter, and there are a lot of different topics to be addressed and explored yet. And big thanks to FAIR for organizing this. FAIR is a network that works globally with football's governing bodies, leagues, clubs, international NGOs, and fans to tackle discrimination in and through the game. And it's always a pleasure to be involved with FAIR. And they are running an online Football People Festival of Ideas as a part of the Football People Weeks, which is the largest campaign for equality and diversity in football, in global football, with over 150,000 people across the world participating in activities every year. It's the festival's inaugural year. We had 12 sessions over 5 days, tackling the big issues around social change in and through football globally. And this is the 5th day of what was a brilliant week of discussions, and you can still get involved using the hashtag #FootballPeople in your tweets about this session and the festival. Here we will discuss the role that football, the most popular sport in the world, the role that football can play in supporting refugees and changing attitudes towards new migrants. Who does this responsibility fall to, and what do interventions in this field look like in reality? There are a lot of questions to be answered and to be discussed here. We examine sports contributions to empowering refugees communities and seek to understand how football can be used as a tool to impact policy and opinion within host countries. And to do so, we have a great lineup of speakers here who will bring different perspectives and insights about our topic. So let's introduce these guests. First, Hussein Abbas, Barça Foundation Educator. Rozma Ghafouri, who will speak to us via and translator, refugee football coach. Namy, social responsibility manager for UEFA. Sentís from Barça Foundation, and Nick Soar from the UN Refugee Agency. So enough from me. Thank you all very much. I'm going to start with you, Nick. Could you provide us an update to the situation facing refugees since 2015 and what type of impact COVID-19 had on the subject?
Okay, hi Natalie. Thanks a lot for the introduction, and thanks to FAIR for the invitation to speak today. It's always great to talk to the football crowd. And as you said, football is the #1 game in the world, and it's the #1 game for refugees in the world. No matter where we go in the world, we see young refugees playing football. So I think I'd like to characterize this in terms of the decade 2010 to 2019. And to be quite frank, it's been a horrible decade for displacement. We've seen the numbers of displaced almost double in the 10 years between 2010 and 2019, 41.1 million in 2010 and 65.1 million in 2015. And then this year's global report, which was for last year, 2019, was almost 80 million, 79.5 million people displaced globally. So that's the equivalent of 1 in every 100 people on the planet. Or 1% of the global population. So that's huge and very disappointing as well, obviously, for UNHCR and organizations working on displacement issues. We see that in the last decade, obviously there's 2015, there was in inverted commas, a refugee crisis in Europe, and Turkey is now the world's largest refugee hosting country, 3.6 million refugees, predominantly from Syria and Afghanistan. But Germany is the only European state in the top 5 refugee hosting countries with 1.1 million. And it's really important to note that 85% of the world's refugees still live in developing or least developed countries. So that's a huge figure when we think about their capacity to support those populations. The 5 main refugee-producing countries are Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Myanmar. And you know, the missing number here is the number of IDPs globally, and the majority of the world's internally displaced people are also based in Syria, Colombia, Afghanistan, and so between the increase in internally displaced people and refugees, we see this huge figure now, one in every 100 people displaced globally. And I think that the decade could be characterized by this rise in populist leadership and populist policies that has led to, in some ways, a less tolerant society, increases in xenophobia and exclusionary policies, I think, having said all of this, it's not all bad. In 2016, and when I look at the role of sport in 2016, we had for the first time a team of refugees participate in the Olympics in Rio, the Rio 10 as we've come to know them, but I'm sure that's not their official name. But this was the first time that refugees participated in a mega sporting event, and 3.6 billion people got to see refugees participate in that event. And also in 2018 for UNHCR, a huge moment was the adoption of the Global Compact on Refugees, which is an international framework for refugee response and for managing large flows of refugees. And then obviously, as we transition into 2020, we reach the second part of your question, which is COVID. And how does this impact refugees? Obviously, I think like people who are not refugees, there are three elements to the situation that refugees face. There's the health factor, the protection factor, and the socioeconomic factor. From a health perspective, refugees, the majority of the world's refugees live in urban environments, so they are at much risk as the general population. But as we see, those who are living in disadvantaged environments, tend to be worse hit by the pandemic, and refugees generally live in poorer communities within the host societies they live in. Fortunately, we haven't had major outbreaks in refugee camps so far. From the protection perspective, and when UNHCR talks about protection, we're talking predominantly about legal protection. One of the main issues is access to asylum. At some point, 149 countries globally had shut their borders entirely, and 72 of those had actually stopped accepting asylum applications at that stage. So that puts increased risk on refugees globally. And then I think finally, from a socioeconomic perspective, refugees generally work in informal jobs or in the informal economy. And when you don't have that kind of job security, that steady paycheck coming in, then those families and communities lose their accommodation. They can't pay their rent, they can't buy food, they can't pay for education, and so on. And I'll leave it there for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. A question that I always hear is why football? What makes football such a powerful tool for this specific matter for refugees? So Rozma, from all your experience as a refugee football coach, why is football so important for refugees empowerment? And what are the common barriers that prevent refugees from accessing football? What infrastructure is required to overcome these barriers, for example?
رزما جان، سوال درباره اینه که چه موانعی سر راه پناهنده ها هست برای فوتبال بازی کردن، و همون بخشی اول سوال درباره اینکه فوتبال چجوری میتونه توانمند بکنه پناهنده ها رو. با همون موانع و بریرها شروع میتونیم بکنیم.
سلام عرض میکنم خدمت همه دوستان. بسیار خوشحال هستم که امروز تونستم باهاشون صحبت کنم و اینکه سالهای سال وقتی کارمون رو شروع کردیم، یکی از آرزوهامون این بود که بتونیم با کسایی که موفق هستن و اینکه توی سطح جهان شناخته شده هستن بتونم صحبت کنم.
Hello everyone, I'm really happy that I'm among you and I'm talking to you. Since the beginning of our work, we have always wanted to be able to talk to people who are active in this area and are successful in this area of sport, playing football and also working with refugees.
در قسمت بخش اول سوالتون میتونم بگم که خب با توجه به اینکه پناهنده ها افرادی هستن که از کشور خودشون آواره شدن و به کشور دیگه مهاجرت کردن، خب ناخودآگاه از لحاظ روحی و روانی واقعا دچار مشکلات زیادی هستن، چه از لحاظ روحی باشه، روانی، اقتصادی و همه اینا تحت فشار هستن و ما تونستیم از طریق فوتبال به یه نوعی کمکشون کنیم که بیان توی کار گروهی شرکت کنن و اینکه بتونن حتی اگه شده در اون لحظه‌ای که فوتبال بازی میکنن، در اون ساعتی که فوتبال بازی میکنن، بتونن اون فشار روانیشون کمتر بشه.
As you are all aware that refugees are people who have fled their own country and are displaced, and they are trying to find a new place in a new country. Usually unconsciously, they are under lots of psychological pressure, and on the other hand, they are under economic, financial, and social pressure as well. We tried to help these refugees through playing football and to be active in some kind of a teamwork, so that at least during the time that they are playing football and they are part of a team, they forget all their problems and their pressures.
و وقتی که حالا بانوانی که میان توی سالن و یا اینکه توی زمین ورزشی و فوتبال بازی میکنن، به علاوه این که از لحاظ جسمی و فیزیکی سالمتر میشن، از لحاظ روحی و روانی هم خیلی تاثیر خوبی داره و به علاوه هم با دوستای جدیدی آشنا میشن، چه اون دوستاشون از جامعه میزبان هست و اینکه دوستان جدیدتری پیدا میکنن و میتونن یه شبکه‌های گروهی رو راه بندازن که بتونن از اون به بعد با کمک همراهی همدیگه مشکلات دیگه‌ای رو هم که دارن برطرف کنن.
When, for example, women refugees, they come to the field and they start playing football, not only this helps them physically, it can have a good effect on, it can have a good psychological effect on them. Moreover, they usually find new friends when they are active in sports. These friends can be other refugees or they can be people from the hosting countries. And gradually they are building new social networks. And these social networks can help them in the future to solve other problems which are not related, for example, only to the sports. It is the problems and issues related to their daily lives.
و اینکه بیشتر با جامعه میزبان آشنا میشن. این بانوان خب تا قبل از این مخصوصا بانوان افغانستانی که بودن، خب بیشتر با جامعه میزبان آشنا نبودن، چون اینا نه تنها این که فوتبال بازی نمی‌کردن، از خیلی از اون چیزایی که حق مسلمشون بوده، مثلا تحصیلات و اینا هم باز مانده بودن و این خیلی بهتر شده که میتونن با همدیگه آشنا بشن و تبادل نظر داشته باشن و از همدیگه کمک و راهنمایی بگیرن.
And one important thing is that these women refugees get to know more about the hosting countries, because especially in Afghan community, the women, not only that they cannot, for example, play football or it is not approved, they don't have access to their other rights. By coming to this field and playing sports and getting to know more about the hosting countries, it really helps them for their future and the issues that they are going to be to face, for example, in the future. They can learn and get help from the hosting countries.
کلا فوتبال نه تنها اینکه از لحاظ جسمی و روانی بهشون کمک میکنه، راه و روش زندگی کردن رو بهشون یاد میده و اینکه خیلی توی آموزش هایی که میبینن، نه تنها آموزش هایی که هست، حتی ما مسائل مشکلاتی رو داشتیم که خیلی از این بانوان ازدواج های زود هنگام رو داشتن و تونستیم با مشاوره هایی که بهشون دادیم بهشون آموزش بدیم که واقعا توی این سن ازدواج برای شما نیست و همینطور تونستیم با پدر مادراشون صحبت کنیم، مشاوره بهشون بدیم که به یه نوعی بانوان هم حق ورزش کردن رو دارن، حق تحصیلات رو دارن.
And also, I just said that football and playing football is good both psychologically and also physically. But coming to our program, there are other important things, and we in a way teach these women how to live. For example, a lot of these women who approached us, they were victims of early marriages, and through counseling that we provided them, we helped them for their life, and also we talked to their parents, and somehow we make them aware that the age of marriage at early marriages is not good for their children, and also try to help them change their a little bit of their mindset. And we talk a lot with the families of the people who usually approach us, and we try to use especially our counseling as a way to help them put aside some of the beliefs that the refugee community has.
خب من خودم به شخصه وقتی که شروع کردیم به ورزش به همراه 3 خواهر کوچکتر خودم، خب با مشکلات زیادی روبرو بودیم. از همش مهمتر مخالفت پدرم بود که واقعا همیشه میگفت ورزش برای بانوان نیست و بانوان نمیتونن ورزش کنن. از لحاظ تحصیلات خیلی دچار مشکل بودیم، چون واقعا اعتقادشون برای این بود که حتی فقط دختر در حدی مثلا خوندن و نوشتن بلد باشه کافیه و همین. خب تونستم موفق بشم همراه با خواهرام، یعنی با حمایت مادرم بود و از این به بعدم دوست دارم که بانوان دیگه‌ای که حامی ندارن و بتونم حامیشون بشم و ازشون حمایت کنم.
And I just say that when we started, me and my other 3 sisters, we had a number of problems. And for example, the main problem was that our father was against us playing football. روزما جان، من تا همینجا نگرش میدارم که ببینیم سوال دیگه دارم. That's Rozma's answer for your question. If there is other things that you want to know, I can continue.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rozma, because it was a very powerful statement. So, Laura, I understand Barça Foundation has been working with refugees for a while, and I had a chance even to speak in the past to a couple of Barça legends who visited camps. I know you guys have a lot of other projects. So could you tell us a bit more about the projects you have and especially the techniques used to address refugees? Because when you have a worldwide known brand such as Barcelona, how much does this help to, break barriers, even when we talk about employability of refugees, which is very complicated, right?
Yes, thank you, Natalie. Well, Barça Foundation since 2017 has been implementing a project to give support to refugees in 4 countries. So it's in Lebanon, in Greece, Italy, and Spain, with the support of Stavros Niarchos Foundation. The main objectives of this project was to improve the physical and emotional well-being of those children, refugee children, and also local children, but also to give and to create safe spaces for them, open and accessible, where they could, regardless of gender, race, or religion. Also, what we wanted to do is to develop our coaches' professional skills, and most importantly, foster social inclusion and coexistence between refugees and local children. And how do we do that? Well, Barça Foundation since 2011 has been implementing a methodology, a sport-based methodology, a curriculum that it first started here in Catalonia, but then it spread all around the world, and that promotes or that teaches, let's say, values such as effort, teamwork, and respect through games, through different sports, through football 3, reflections. So basically we use sport as a tool to educate and to teach those values and skills to children and youth. And this is what we've been doing in the 4 countries where we have been running this refugee project. For example, in Lebanon, we work in Bekaa Valley. We've been working for these 3 years in Bekaa Valley with Lebanese kids and also refugee kids, basically from Syria. We run activities in municipal sites close to the informal settlements where most of the Syrian refugee kids live. And we've trained more than 200 coaches, 30% of them female, and also some of them are refugees. And they have been running activities on a weekly basis to more than 5,000 kids. So we have this model, which is more an extracurricular activity, but we also have sessions, let's say. We also implement the methodology inside the public schools in Lebanon with the support of the Ministry of Education and Higher Education, where we've trained more than 150 PE teachers who deliver the curriculum during the PE sessions to more than 11,000 students. For example, in Greece, we have programs in Athens and in Lesbos, both inside the refugee camps and also outside in sports fields or school grounds, where we have also trained more than 150 coaches, and there have been participating more than 5,000 kids. In Italy, the model is more or less the same. We've been collaborating with UNHCR Italy and the social cooperatives who run the accommodation centers in Sicily for unaccompanied minors. And there we have trained 100 coaches, and there have been participating 800 youth, most of both local and also some unaccompanied minors that come basically from North and West Africa. In Catalonia, for the last 2 years, we've been collaborating with the Catalan government as well, and we've been implementing activities with the entities who run the shelters of unaccompanied minors. We've trained also 70 coaches. We have more than 700 participants. And with this, what I want to say is that during these last 3 years, with the experience of implementing these activities and this sport-based curriculum in this refugee context, Barça Foundation has identified some challenges and some needs of a specific target group, which are the unaccompanied minors, these youth who are between 15 to 18 years old and who underwent this journey to Europe on their own, and who don't have a familiar context where, you know, they have the support of a family and they have the support to transition into adulthood. So this is where we identified that we could help them in somehow the same way, using sport and using football as a tool to educate or to teach different skills. But we thought that it would be more important to focus on skills that would help them later to enter the labor market, to gain some employability skills, some social skills that could help them in their transition to employment and to adulthood. So because we need to take in mind that for example, here in Catalonia or even in Italy, when they turn 18 years old and they leave the care system, they really face a lot of challenges, and it's very difficult for them. They lack of experience, of networks, of information. So what we've done is we have adapted this methodology, the Football Net methodology, which is a sport-based curriculum, and to focus on the skills that promote more their employability. So this is what we've done so far within the refugee program these last few years.
Yeah, you mentioned social skills, Laura, and people always talk about sense of belonging, how football can bring a sense of belonging to these refugees. So Hussein, as an educator from Barça Foundation, from all your experience and a person who played football as well, do you think that the focus on using football as a tool is more to empower, to integrate, or also to educate local people to accept refugees in their community? Because we have this issue, and it's a very bad issue. I know incorporating refugees into this new environment, into society, can be one of the most challenging aspects. So how do you guys deal with that?
Hello, thank you. Yes, I believe in the sport, in the football. It has the power to bring everybody together. It doesn't matter from where they are coming, or if they are local or refugee. For example, in our program, we're running in 2 camps in Scaramagaz and Vionas. We are taking the kids 1 time or 2 times per month outside of the camp. So like this, they can meet local kids and they can be together. And also the local, the kids from Greece, we can see how they are welcome the refugee, and the most important, how they became a friend. They create a friend. They start to be together. They find out the contact between each other. So they start to ask, oh, we want to go again. We want to go to see our friend. So I can believe the sport, how can change everything, and how it can bring these kids together. So yes, as also I am a football player. I also played here in 1 team in Greece. When I went to the team, they welcomed me. I felt I am in my home. They don't let me to feel even one time I am not like them, or I am from other country. So just they always welcome me. Yes, as I told you in our program, we are also trying to put our effort to give everything to these kids. So because as these kids, they lost many time from their life. They travel from country to country, and they lost many things. They didn't go to the school for a long time. So what we are doing inside this program, we are teaching them the values. It can help them for their future, and with this value, they can also to have better life and better to have good communication with other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've been hearing from Hussein and Laura that work for Barcelona Foundation, but there are a lot of other clubs, smaller associations involved with this matter. So Monica, could you tell us more about other good initiatives through UEFA national associations and UEFA-led schemes, and what is it about some of the examples you're about to give us? What is it that makes these projects successful?
Hi, Natalie, and thanks to the FAIR Network for the invitation. Always a pleasure to be with you. As the governing body of European football, our role is a bit different. We're quite far removed from the ground, in contrary to the Barça Foundation, for example. So I see UEFA's role as, we can contribute in two ways. One is through funding. We have a number of funding opportunities that we have put in place. And the other is through raising awareness. And I don't want to bore you with all the details of the funding opportunities, but just to give you a little bit of context. So we have one specific program in place that is dedicated to football and refugees. It's available to our national football associations through bidding process. Then we work with the European Commission as well. So they have the Erasmus Plus programs that make funding available. And we have a public affairs specialist that helps our national associations obtain some of that funding in cooperation with NGOs oftentimes and foundations. Then we have the UEFA Foundation for Children. They specifically focus on children, as their title says, and they currently run 12 programs for refugee children across the globe, and half of them being in Europe. When it comes to raising awareness, so we obviously use our media platforms, social media being a big part of them. And I think there the storytelling is really key. We have a campaign that's called Equal Game campaign. And 2 years ago, we released a documentary about Abu Bakr. He was a young refugee from Gambia, and he was one of those unaccompanied minors that Laura mentioned. And the documentary talks about how when he gets to Italy, he's really lost, he struggles, to adapt to his new circumstances. But then thanks to football, he starts to feel better. He addresses some of his trauma because he makes new friends. He gets to play the game that he really, really loves. And while the storyline is maybe not that original, it helped me, it reminded me that behind this sometimes abstract concept of refugees and behind all the facts and figures, there's always a human being with the emotions and the story to tell. And that, for me, created the link between the programs that I support financially, but that I usually just get to see on paper and never on the ground. So it created this link between this kind of abstract support that I give, and then it made me realize there's really concrete action happening on the ground that will make a difference to a person's life. And then to get back to the UEFA Foundation, next year when hopefully Euro 2020 will happen, they will have 7 festivals in Euro host cities to raise awareness for refugees. So they will involve lots of refugee children, NGOs on the ground. And speaking of NGOs, all of our programs require the input from experts, because we as a football organization, we know about organizing football matches, but we don't know about migration and the specific needs of refugees. So we always make sure that our member associations partner up with NGOs and experts on the ground. I think that's really key to the success of these programs. And you've asked me about what makes a difference to some of these programs. So when football associations first started to address this issue, this situation, they started out by simply offering playing opportunities. So they invited refugees to come to the club and play football. And that was great because it did give them a sense of belonging. When you're uprooted from your home, from everybody that you know, I think you need to find yourself in a peer group where you feel you belong. And playing football, that provides that sense. But then we realized that beyond the pitch, playing football doesn't really foster inclusion into your host societies. So we and our partners have started adapting our programs, and there's now usually new elements that help foster inclusion, such as language courses, courses about cultural specificities of your host society. There's job markets, to help with access to labor markets. And I think that works especially well in a club setting, because clubs are very much embedded in the local communities. There's support, psychological support to help with trauma. There's different pathways into football as well, because not everybody wants or can be a player. So there's now courses dedicated to refugees becoming a coach or referee, or maybe an administrator, volunteer. So there's lots of different options now emerging. I think that's a development that's that we should definitely keep supporting, so that we do actually address the real needs that refugees have.
Yeah, Monica was talking about UEFA and UEFA national associations, but we also have lots of things going on in Latin America, Middle East, Jordania. So Nick, could you explain us more of these other activities happening? And about these models, is there like a one-size-fits-all approach? Is there a model to be followed? And how much do you have to consider the local nuances, the local context, economically, socially? So how do you find this middle ground?
Okay, thanks, Natalie. I mean, I think we've heard quite a bit about programmatic approaches and programs for engaging refugees and refugee communities in football activities, and you know, this is a very, very important aspect of the role that sport can play, and obviously UNHCR through partners engages in programs all over the world, as you said, in Latin America and the Middle East, in Asia Pacific region, Africa, and so on. The colleagues have talked about, you know, different programs that they're engaged in. Obviously, the Barça Foundation have been doing great work, and our colleagues in Italy have been supporting that work in some way. We have also worked with the International Olympic Committee and the Swiss Child Protection Agency, TEDASOM, to develop an approach to developing sports projects for refugee communities. We called it a sport for protection approach, and between 2016 and 2018, we developed a dedicated toolkit that outlines the approach and really helps both sports actors, but humanitarian actors to develop programs and projects in line with some kind of core standards, human rights standards, child protection systems approach, understanding how to engage community stakeholders, etc., etc. And obviously, you know, the nuance that you talk about is really important, because a one size fits all approach does not work, and each location is different, and each community is different, and the community engagement in program development is absolutely paramount. But we did do extensive research prior to developing the sport for protection approach, and you know, reached out to young refugees and refugee communities and practitioners globally, and came up with 3 kind of broad outcome areas that we wanted to you know, have impact in. One is psychosocial well-being of young refugees. The other is social inclusion, and the third one is social cohesion, so the cohesion between communities and between ethnicities, etc. But I think beyond the program piece, you know, what's you know, there are many other ways that sport is contributing to refugee issues. The communications that sports actors are engaged in. I mean, recently UNHCR announced a partnership with Alianza Lima, which is a big Peruvian football club that you're probably more aware of than most. But you know, the idea of this partnership is that Alianza Lima, you know, becomes a club that supports refugees openly. And they provide opportunities for young refugees to those with elite talent to engage in football training, but also they develop clinics for life skills development and these kinds of stuff. And there will be communications efforts around that. The football world and the sports world has a huge role to play in telling refugee stories, I think you know, we only need to look at a young player from Bayern Munich who won the Champions League this summer, Alphonso Davies, to demonstrate the power that sports actors can have in this space. And so there are, beyond the programmatic, there are the communications efforts, there are the opportunity to identify expertise and resources that can support refugees in sport. There are the opportunity to identify refugees with elite talent, and obviously there are the opportunities that sport as a platform itself can provide to have diplomatic discussions on refugee issues.
Mm-hmm. And Nick, what are the priorities of the UN Refugee Agency in this area? What would they like to see happening better? Where do you see more room for improvement?
It's a good question. There's always room for improvement. I mean, I guess I mentioned briefly earlier on. One of the successes of the last decade was the adoption of the Global Compact on Refugees, and the Global Compact on Refugees is this framework that really sets out how the global community will support refugees and refugee hosting countries and those host communities, and I think that for the first time in a UNHCR document, sport and sports organizations are specifically mentioned as key actors in this, and really we would like to engage with as many sports organizations, sports entities, football clubs, federations, and so on globally, to really think about how they can engage with us and with Barça Foundation and with UEFA and with all of the partners engaged in refugee issues to support refugee communities, but also the communities that host them.
And talking more about the impact these projects can have. Laura, you have a vast experience coordinating programs with refugees. So how tangible is the impact we can record? How do football activities really benefit individuals? Is there a way to measure this?
Well, in Barça Foundation, we've conducted 2 external evaluations in the last 3 years within the refugee program. The first one was during the season 2017-2018, and it came out really interesting and positive social outcomes. First of all, we could notice that there was high satisfaction and attendance among participants. I mean, children, I know it may sound very simple, but Hussein also, as he explained, children came to the activity, they had fun, and this is they showed commitment. So it was really important for us. It also proved that it improved their emotional well-being. It's related to the objective that I commented before, right? Where the children, they have a safe space where they feel less angry, there are less conflicts, and they felt calmer. So this was also something that it was noticed in the evaluation. It was also evident that the children, the participants, created really strong friendships and enhanced bonds with peers from different backgrounds. And we could also see that there were very respectful and tolerant attitudes, to try to neutralize a little bit those cultural stereotypes that still exist nowadays. And the last point, it's also like what Rozma she mentioned, right? That we could notice an increase in the confidence of girls participants, and also more acceptance from the male participant boys to see the girls participating in the activities. So that was a little bit the outcomes that we could see in the first external evaluation. The second one in 2018 and 2019, it was more focused on social inclusion and coexistence between refugee and local children. And there we could see that there was an acquisition of life skills that helped children to be more resilient to difficult situations. And it facilitated social inclusion itself. And we could also see an improved how the perceptions towards refugees among local children and also parents improved, which for us, it was really important to see that. Now, with the methodology that I explained before concerning the unaccompanied minors and how to improve their employability competencies, thanks to new funds that we received from UEFA Foundation and also with a working group from the Erasmus Plus Fund, we are about to test and evaluate this sport-based methodology or sports-based intervention that will focus on employability skills of unaccompanied minors in Europe. So we hope that we can have really good impact, and we can know how is this new intervention successful or not.
Yeah, Laura and Rozma, they touched on a very, very relevant matter and very interesting one, that is girls engaging more, women and girls engaging more with football in this refugee context. So Rozma, is there like a specific approach to reach girls and women, to have them engaging more? How do you deal with that?
رزما جان، سوالشون درباره این هست که شما برای اینکه زنها و دخترها بیشتر توی فوتبال درگیر بیشتر بتونن به حضور داشته باشن و بازی بکنن، چه کارهایی انجام دادی؟ چه جوری جذب کردین بیشتر خانم‌ها و دخترها رو برای اینکه وارد فوتبال بازی کردن بشن؟ و تا اینجا حالا سوالشون فعلا تو همین حده.
خب راضی کردن خانواده ها بسیار مشکل بود. به سختی من تونستم این کار رو انجام بدم. در ابتدایی که ما اون سالن ها و اون مکان های ورزشی رو که میگرفتیم و اینکه بانوان میخواستن بیان بازی کنن، خب خیلی از پدر و مادرها هم به خصوص پدرها چون نمیتونستن وارد اون سالن ورزشی بشن، مادرهاشون هم میفرستادن که ببینن اینجا چه اتفاقی قرار بیفته، با دخترای ما مثلا میخوان ورزش کنن یا اصلا اعتماد وجود نداشت و این خیلی به سختی تونستم این اعتماد رو جلب کنم با اون مشاوره هایی که گرفته شد و اون کمک هایی که از طرف مشاوره هایی که توی کمیساریا و اداره اتباع بودن ما تونستیم به یه نوعی متقاعدشون کنیم. ولی خب بیشتر این خانواده ها
At first it was very hard to convince the families to let their daughters to come to our sport facilities to play with us. Especially it was hard because when we rented the facilities, the fathers couldn't enter. The male members of the family couldn't enter these places. So they asked the mothers to accompany the daughters to these facilities to be sure to see what they were being taught and to know what is going on in the facility, in the sport facility. But because there was no trust. So building this trust was the main issue and the first step. And through the counseling sessions we have and through the meetings that we had with them with the help of UNHCR and its governmental counterpart BAFIA, we managed to attract more women to come to our facility to participate in this program.
بعد از اینکه اومدن و واقعا دیدن که هم برای سلامتی روحی و روانیشون خیلی خوب هست، بیشتر مادرها هم علاقه‌مند شدن و به علاوه این که خب ما تقریبا میشه گفت از بچگی فوتبال بازی میکردیم و اینکه دوست داشتیم، علاقه داشتیم، با حتی پسرایی که بودن توی کوچه و خیابون ما میرفتیم بازی میکردیم، چون اون موقع خیلی سالن‌های ورزشی و اینا نبود برای بانوان و ما بعدش تیم بانوان رو راه اندازی کردیم و تونستیم یه تیم منسجم‌تر داشته باشیم. خب استقبال کردن، ولی خب یه مشکلاتی هم که وجود داره این هست که از لحاظ اقتصادی و نمیتونن واقعا خانواده ها تأمین کنن، یعنی اونقدر از لحاظ اقتصادی قوی نیستن که بتونن بچه هاشون رو ساپورت کنن که هم از لحاظ تحصیلاتی و ورزشی بتونن ورزش کنن و این براشون واقعا سخته.
The other thing that I want to say is that, okay, we know that they come to our facility, they started playing, and it was good for them, at least physically. But after a time, even their mothers who accompanied them were interested in the activities that we were doing and in the sport in general. And I have to say that we started to play football in the alleys with the other boys, because at the time that we started playing football, there weren't so much facilities for women. And but gradually we managed to shape a team. It was better for us that we had a team of women football players. The other issue, other than trust, that is making it hard for us to continue our job is the financial aspects, because families usually cannot both provide for their children to come to go to the school, to play, to participate in such sport activities. And this is the thing that it makes it hard for them, even if they are okay and happy with them going to sport facilities, but it is hard for them to provide for them.
خب من واقعا دوست دارم که همین که خودم و خواهرانم، سه تا از خواهرانم واقعا به شدت علاقه خیلی خاص دارن به ورزش و همینطور که بتونن توی تیم‌های مختلف ورزشی، حالا به خصوص اروپایی، بازی کنن، واقعا خیلی دوست دارم. خب اگر که من و اون تیم ورزشی که داریم بتونیم یه حمایت و یه به نوعی پیشرفت کنیم و واقعا تعداد خیلی زیادی جذب میشن. بعضی از این خانواده ها دخترانشون خیلی علاقه دارن، ولی وقتی که میان میگن خب شما به کجا رسیدیم، شما سالهای سال هست که وقتتون رو گذاشتیم برای ورزش و اینکه هنوزم که هنوزه اونقدری که باید پیشرفت نکردین و باعث میشه که دخترانشون رو نفرستن ورزش کنن. این خب برای من خیلی آزاردهنده هست.
You know, for example, me and my three sisters, we play football, and we really like that. For example, our team that we have, we can play with other teams, and also that, for example, some of us who are more talented to participate, to go and play in other teams, especially, for example, if it was in Europe. But then I want to say that we need supports, because so many families are eager to invite to send their children to play with us and to be active and become football players. But there is a problem. They see us and they say, okay, you have been active for so many years. What is the result? You have progressed, but it is not that much that we expected. So it results in them not be sending their children to our facility. روزما جان فکر کنم تا اینجا کافیه، ببینیم ادامه داره سوالشون یا. Okay, if there are more questions.
Yes, actually, these personal experiences, they really enrich the conversation. And talking about that, Hussein, considering your personal experiences as well, and looking to the future, considering your background, how important is it to have refugees represented among coaches and decision makers? And we have a few questions, so if you're following this panel, you can always send questions to us. And I have a question that I would like to pose to Hussein that we got here. What resources or tips does the panel have for activists who seek to encourage manufacturers and organizations to donate footballs to schools or communities that are unable to purchase them for refugee students and youth? Because Rozma was talking actually about this sometimes lack of structure and these type of barriers or of challenges that you guys face.
Yes, let me first to thanks Barcelona Foundation for bringing this program to the camps, because inside the camp the kids, they have nothing to do. I mean, they don't have any sport activity, they don't have anything to do, they don't have to go to the school. So when Barcelona Foundation, they came and they brought this program to inside the camp, they came and they brought a life with them for these kids. You cannot imagine, like, we have the different in the beginning with the children from the beginning until now. For example, some of the kids in the beginning in our program, he was crying if he was losing, he was angry, he was fighting with the others. So through the value, we are teaching them the 5 values: it's effort, respect, humility, ambition, and teamwork. We start to explain to him through, like, if you lost right now, put effort, next time you will win. If you will respect the other people they will respect you back. Always with a team, or when you are playing as a team, everything it will become easy for you. And believe me, right now he became the best child in our program. And also there's the trust we got from their family, because I was living inside the camp. The trust we got from their family, it's for me, it's really huge, because some of the family, they were coming to me, they were telling me, please, I need to help my child. He's inside the home. He cannot go out of the camp. He cannot go out of the home. So I went to him. I spoke with him. I get him in our program. Like this, also the trust between us and the kids. It's really great. Some of the kids, they were coming to us, to me, and to talk some problem they were having between their children or in the school, and they were never talking to their family. So this is really great and good for us.
Yeah. Yes, that's very interesting, because a question that I always hear as well is why is this necessarily a responsibility of football clubs or football associations in general? So Monica, from what you experience with so many different countries and FAs, what are the challenges maintaining investment, actually, because we're living a very peculiar moment, considering the economic and social changes post-COVID-19, and we need to keep this in conversation. So what's the main challenge to keep the interest and the investments as well, of course?
As I said, most of our programs are implemented through the national football associations, and there's definitely some that struggle a lot with the economic impact of COVID-19. And in their cases, we do see funding and attention get diverted away from these issues and towards COVID relief measures, simply to keep their football infrastructures and football clubs alive. But we also observe the opposite phenomenon. So we see a lot of organizations, football associations, that are now stepping up, because they feel that now more than ever, football needs to demonstrate leadership and needs to show solidarity with the weaker members of our communities. And also, I think a lot of football associations have started to understand that we will see a much bigger and lasting engagement from partners, whether they're commercial partners such as sponsors, fans, if we place a purpose at the heart of everything that we do. So it's kind of like two sides of the same coin. But I definitely see a lot of the positive effects of COVID as well, which is maybe a little bit surprising.
Yes, definitely. And And how do you think we sustain interest, Nick? How do you sustain interest as global attention is diverting away from refugees? Monica just mentioned that there is this other side. So how do you see this current moment regarding the refugee issue and the challenges that many countries face now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question, and I think obviously from UNHCR's perspective, the refugee situation is not going away, as I outlined earlier. But you know, the refugee issue now is one amongst you know, many, and obviously with the COVID situation, this is the overriding concern of most people. I think you know, what's important, or what remains important, is the stories we tell, and you know, you as a journalist will understand this, but it is the most marginalized in our communities that are suffering the most because of the COVID situation, and refugees are, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, are frequently amongst the most marginalized in the communities within which they live. So, you know, we need to just keep telling the stories, and highlighting the positive contributions that these individuals and communities are making to, certainly, for example, the COVID response, and you know, this is something that our communications colleagues have worked very hard on, this, you know, highlighting the very positive response that so many displaced people have made to COVID responses, whether they're internally displaced in their own countries, or whether they're displaced to a third country.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Actually, in England this week, we got a question. In England this week, the government voted against allowing unaccompanied child and asylum seekers to join family in the UK. What role can football and football's governing bodies play in influencing public opinion and ultimately national policy on refugees? So I wanted to hear as well about that from Laura, because you obviously have worked in different projects and you work with Barça Foundation. And what do you think is the power that football and this football club, for example, can play in influencing the public opinion as well regarding refugee and how they can be incorporated to society?
Yes, well, as you mentioned before, Barça Foundation takes part of a big club, right, Barça, and we are aware of that. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to use the media platforms that we have to, as Nick said, we are trying to communicate all the positive stories that are behind our participants in our programs. For example, now we are just let's say creating here in Catalonia a committee of experts with different journalists, with lawyers, with different experts in the sector of unaccompanied minors, to try to change, to try to find actions that can help change the narrative that the media is using against especially unaccompanied minors here in Catalonia. So I think this is the power, or this is the tool that we have as a foundation and as being part of the FCB Barcelona club, is that we have a huge speaker. We have a big community of fans that can hear our message, and this is the way that we can insist, or at least try that this message reach to as many people as possible. So this is what we are trying to do. We just use the means and the tools that we have to help these refugees, youth migrants that are facing really, really difficult challenges.
And I would like to hear more from Rozma about these challenges of reincorporating refugees and giving them a new sense of normality and a sense of reality. So in her daily basis, Rozma, how do you deal with these type of challenges, and what are the main problems? What are the main barriers that you found working all these years with refugees? And how could you assess that?
روزما جان، سوال درباره این هست که چه موانعی توی این تمام این سالهایی که درگیر این کار بودید با چه موانعی روبرو بودید و موانع اصلی چیا هست، و اینکه اگر هم بشه توضیح داد که مثلا توی حتی زندگی روزمره در واقع چه چالش‌های ممکن بوده براشون پیش بیاد و چه جوری شما باش مواجه شدید. این هم مناسب، یعنی مفید اگر توضیح بدید، ولی بیشتر روی اون چالش ها سوالشونه. حالا چه چالش هایی پیش روتون بوده؟
چالش های مختلفی بود واقعا. با دخترانی داشتم کار میکردم که از لحاظ روحی روانی واقعا دچار مشکل بودن و این چالش های روزمره‌ای که داشتم، من دخترانی داشتم توی تیم که حتی به فکر خودکشی افتاده بودن از اون مشکلات روحی که توی خونه داشتن، مشکلات اقتصادی که وجود داشت و اون سختگیری‌های خانواده هاشون که ما با اون مشاوره هایی که بهشون دادیم و با اون تیمی که دارم کار میکنم که بخش عمده‌شون خانواده‌ام هستن و دفتر سازمان ملل هست که واقعا حمایت میکنه ازم، خب مشاوره های زیادی بهشون دادیم. مشکلاتشون واقعا خیلی زیاد بود. مشکلاتی که الان من باهاش دوچار هستم این هست که از لحاظ امکانات اقلام ورزشی و اینکه بتونم به راحتی بدون اینکه به فکر اون بحث مالیش باشم بتونم این دخترها رو ساپورت کنم، چه از لحاظ اون سانس‌های ورزشی که بتونم براشون بگیرم و چه از لحاظ اون مسائل مشکلاتی که دارن امکاناتشون و اینا رو بتونم براشون فراهم کنم و واقعا اون وعده هایی که بهشون دادم که من میتونم کمکتون کنم که توی یه تیم موفق داشته باشیم که توی سطح جهان شناخته شده باشه تیمم، خیلی خوشحال میشم که بتونم اینا رو براشون فراهم کنم.
We had different challenges. Usually the women and the girls that I'm working with, as I mentioned earlier, they have lots of problems. I have worked with girls who were thinking about committing, for example, committing suicide because of all the problems that they had at home, whether they were because of financial problems or they were because of their families were very strict about them and didn't want them to come and play or do other activities. We managed to help them to some extent through our counseling and the team that we have, which is mostly my family members, and also the helps that I always receive from UNHCR. The problem that I am facing now is about providing sport equipment for our team and the things that we need, especially equipment that we need, and it makes me it is really hard because I cannot just think that, okay, we need this thing and I can provide it, because I cannot neglect the financial part. So it is making it even harder for us these days. And I am always thinking that I have made promises to these girls that one day our team will be internationally known, but sometimes I'm afraid that I cannot realize this promise, and it is really hard. ادامه داره یا؟
داره.
خب
Thank you very much, Rozma. And we have to wrap up this session, unfortunately, but big thanks to our great panelists, because I know I definitely learned a lot from them. Hussein, Rozma, Monica, Laura, Nick. It was really a true pleasure hearing you share your amazing experience and knowledge. And thank you very much to FAIR as well, because they are the ones who are organizing all this. FAIR is a network that works globally with football's governing bodies, leagues, clubs, international NGOs, and fans to tackle discrimination in and through the game. And this was the final session of the Football People Festival of Ideas. It was a part of the Football People Week. So thank you very much for everyone who participated in the Football People Festival. And we need to keep the conversations going. So follow FAIR on social media @FairNet. Use the hashtag #FootballPeople in your tweets about this session and the festival. And thank you all for participating, for sending the questions. And I hope we can all take what we learned today to really make change happen. So thank you very much, everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Natalie.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks, everybody.
you.
Thank you. Bye.